What's up guys, my name is Josh, and today we're going to talk about the term audiophile. And why I hate it, because I think it sounds dirty, because I'm a dirty-minded person, and it sounds a little weird. Not really. Really what I want to talk about, and let's be very clear, there's no conclusion, there's no final say, there's no real solid reason why I'm making this video. I just kind of thought it was an interesting topic that I wanted to talk about. So there's a couple different definitions depending on like what site you go to. If you go to like, Google the definition of audiophile, you get one definition. If you dictionary.com it, you get a different definition. I'm just going to stick with Google's because it's the easiest. The definition of audiophile is a hi-fi enthusiast. Very descriptive, Google. And hi-fi stands for high fidelity, obviously. The definition of high fidelity is the reproduction of sound with little distortion given a result very similar to the original. And then the definition of enthusiast is a person who is highly interested in a particular activity or subject. So what this all amounts to is a person who is highly interested in the accurate reproduction of music and how it sounds. Okay. So really what I wanted to talk about was why this is kind of a super loose definition. Let's talk about the definition of high fidelity for a second. So you have the accurate reproduction of something that resembles the original or something along those lines, something that kind of mimics that ideology of what it's about. And I feel like with what this amounts to is, and specifically what I want to talk about, is when people say like something has like an audiophile sound signature or an audiophile sound. And I think that there is really no such thing as an audiophile sound, because if you're going to talk about the inaccurate reproduction of the original, what the original is going to be highly dependent upon what the artist intends you to hear. If the artist intends you to hear just absolutely ridiculous thumping sub bass, then, having these just epic freaking like bass drops or something like that, then if you have a system that can play that, if you have just this monstrous subwoofer and you don't really have a lot of tweeter, but you don't need it because the artist doesn't intend you to hear it, is that technically considered high fidelity? Under the current understanding of high fidelity, no, not really. But under the definition of it, yes. If the artist intends you to hear that music that way, and that is a close and accurate representation to the original, then yes. I mean, I guess I do have somewhat of a conclusion. I guess the conclusion of what I'm trying to say here is that audiophile or high fidelity is kind of an old, not really accurate term for current music, because high fidelity actually does have some solid and accurate meaning and useful meaning when you're talking about live or analog or acoustic recording. So when you're actually recording something and then not processing it and putting it out into the world, can you have a high fidelity reproduction of that, a representation of it that is equal or close to as possible of the original? Yes, you can. But when you're talking about electronically produced music, which is a large portion of today's music, even if you don't realize it, even in sounds that mimic what seem to be reality. And when you're talking about that digitally created sound, who's to say what a high fidelity version of that is? So you could take like a bass drop or something like that. Certain bass drops are sounds that cannot be reproduced by any instrument that we currently have. I'm not talking about depth of frequency or anything like that. I'm just talking about how the bass, fluctuates or how it moves. There is no instrument that can reproduce that. So there's no way to say what's the original other than what the artist actually ends up creating it and finishes it as. So if they intend you to hear these sparkling bright highs or these incredibly deep and rumbling and just obnoxious lows, then that is technically, under the definition, a high fidelity sound if you are hearing it the way that the artist originally created it. This is just kind of like going around in my head. And I would say that high fidelity as a definition has a certain place in today's music world. There are still headphones that I feel like can produce high fidelity music, and I can comfortably use that definition in a meaningful way, but it depends on the track and what that song is being recorded from, what it's being recorded of, what the artist intends you to hear it, how much mixing and mastering goes into it, things like that. I don't know, just food for thought. I guess if I were to come to an overall conclusion to this, I would say that the definition of high fidelity or audiophile really needs to be updated. It needs to be redefined and changed to fit today's more modern standards, because When you're talking about the overwhelming majority of music, I'm sorry to say it, but most music is created at least partially digitally. If not completely made digitally, it's at least enhanced or warped or changed or adjusted digitally. So what's considered an audiophile sound or a high fidelity sound really just depends on what the artist intended you to hear. So as much as this statement sounds like heresy, you could take an artist that produced music to sound good or sound a particular way on Beats headphone and technically quantify them as a high fidelity headphone because that's how the original was meant to be heard. And as crazy as that sounds, under the definition, that's true. And now I don't think by any means are the old or the new Beats headphones considered to be accurate or something that I would consider a high quality sound or anything like that. But if you're going definition based, I'm just saying, do you see the reason why I say we need to update it, come up with new terms? I actually prefer the term audio purist because one, it doesn't sound as dirty, and two, it doesn't really have like a stock definition for it. And so it gives people kind of the opportunity and the ability to manipulate and more specify what a audiophile or a high fidelity sound should sound like to incorporate the modern world. Because the creation of the term high fidelity actually goes way, way back and really isn't as applicable to the modern world as it should be. And if this is something that kind of picks up or is something that you guys are interested in, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what a more accurate description of what a accurate headphone should be. So I don't know, just random thoughts. I'm probably just going way off on a tangent now, but yeah, I'd love to know what you guys think about this. And subscribe if you're not already. Patreon link if you support my crazy ass talking about weird things and talking about saying crazy statements like Beats or a high fidelity headphones. So give me money. Just kidding. All right, guys, I'll catch you in the next video. Peace.